Okay, let's get started. Our main topic today is going to be Why Are My Devices Slow by myself, Tom Kreuzer. First, a little bio about myself. I'm known as the PC guy because I had the personalized license plate PC guy for about 45 years there. I'm the son of John Kreuzer here at Carondelet. I worked over 40 years at 3M in the information technology area. I am currently officer and presenter and have been with the 3M Personal Computing Club for 35 years. So I give a lot of the same presentations that I do to both organizations. I do offer free computer help. If you want to contact me, you can do it from the Carondelet website, or you can see my email on the back of the handout. I mentioned that I'm thrifty and not cheap, so if there's a solution that uses free software or certain hardware that may be cheaper than buying more expensive stuff, I'm usually going to mention that or try that out to get the best value that you can for your money there. Okay, we do have a topic coming up in January. That's been set already, and the date for that is January 11th, and we'll be talking about smartwatches for everybody. They're the latest trends, lots of options, lots of functions. The other thing that I do, along with my brother-in-law, Gary Marlowe, and my sister, Mary, is we do the Fix-It Clinic. And we usually do that about every 2 months or so. The next one is Monday, January 16th from 1 to 3 p.m. And you can sign up for that down at the information table. If you've got anything that's broken, well, we'll do our best to see if we can fix it or that. There's slots that you can sign up for. So if you've got appliances, small appliances, lamps, electronics, mobile devices, jewelry, small furniture, fans, questions, or if you just want general assistance there. It can be even smartphone or laptop or that. You can bring it in 15-minute slots. I mentioned out on the Carondelet website, and this is the URL to the website. About a year ago, added a new option out there called Tech Help. And one of the important things in the Tech Help that we put out there is in the resources, there's past meetings. So I'm recording most of the meetings, and the handouts are out there. So if you miss one or want to revisit it, you can go out to the website. You can also submit questions, and there's a calendar out there too of the future Fix-It and computer-related events. Okay, let's get to the main topic today, which is why are my devices slow? And when I talk about devices, the devices that we'll be using are smartphones, tablets, laptops, desktops, so variety there. This document and the presentation provides information that you can use to optimize your devices that are running slow. Options listed that I list will work on most of the devices, but they may be in different settings on the different devices and the operating system that you're using. So I may be showing you one spot, but because there's so many different devices and operating systems and that, they're usually somewhere on there. You just may have to look a little bit. I mentioned here that you can spend money on software. So there's plenty of apps and software that you can buy that claim to optimize your device. But most of the devices that you have already come with some tools to help you manage and optimize your device. And that's what we'll be talking about today. First thing we'll do is kind of give a background to some of these devices. So what are the parts of the device that make it slow? It's usually having some of these old parts. So the older the device gets, the slower it seems because the newer devices are so much faster and more efficient there. So we'll be talking about the basic things that make up the hardware on these devices. And again, when I talk about devices, this graphic shows a desktop, but really you have all the same hardware in your smartphones and in your tablets. as you have on a laptop or a desktop. In addition, some definitions. When I say the word software, I really mean programs or apps. So if you have a smartphone, you're used to downloading or working with apps, and they're the same thing as software or programs that you have on a laptop or a desktop. The other thing you have is, I'm going to abbreviate it to OS, and you've probably heard that term before. That stands for operating system. And so that's the code or the mechanism that runs the software on the program. Okay, the first major component on any of these devices is something called a CPU, and that stands for Central Processing Unit. That's what runs the code that's in the operating system and the software. The thing that varies different CPUs is they can come with a number of cores or processors in them. In the old days, when you bought the original Apple and the original IBM, and that CPU consisted of one core or processor. Over the years, things have gotten better and faster and smaller and all that. And today on these chips, you see anywhere from 1 to 32 processors, which makes them that much faster and better there. The other variable that you have with the CPUs that are on there is the speed, and that's usually measured now in gigahertz. And the higher the number, the faster the speed of the multiple CPUs that you may have. Another factor that influences how fast the CPU is running or your device is running is these CPUs, because there's all kinds of transistors and they're running fast and stuff like that, they consume a lot of power and can generate a lot of heat. Well, heat and power are bad things for your smartphones and your tablets. So in some cases, those devices are slowed down, or they put in slower processors and that on there because they don't want the devices overheating or draining the battery too fast. So those are features or considerations when devices are being made there for the CPUs. Next thing we'll talk about is something called a GPU, and you may not have heard that term much, but it stands for Graphics Processing Unit, or sometimes called the video CPU. On all of these devices, in order to get us the information or for us to input information in that, you need a screen or a monitor. So on a smartphone, you have a screen. On a laptop, you have the screen in that. And that's going to show your images for the various devices. The way that it can show the images, it needs to have a lot of processing because you're talking about millions of bits, which can be millions of colors, and you have video and you have all these things and resizing and moving mouse or your finger across, and all that requires a very high speed processor. And so that's why the GPU needs to be almost as fast, if not faster, than the CPUs. And it has the same issues. You can get GPUs with multiple processors, faster speed, and again, the power and heat can be an issue. Okay, the next hardware component is RAM, and that stands for Random Access Memory. That's the memory to run the operating system and the software on the device. If you have too little RAM, so it can't load in the entire operating system or the programs that it's running, it has to read and write things off to a hard drive or to other memory, and that can slow it down. It can slow it down 100 times slower than if you have enough RAM. So it's important to have enough RAM and not make the CPU having to swap stuff in and out to run it. Another component is what's called the HDD or SDD. That stands for hard disk drive or solid state disk. disk. And that's where the data itself is stored. That can be the operating system, the software that you have, documents that you create, photos that you take, videos, music, and other data. So all the data that you have has to be stored on either an HDD or an SDD. The RAM is memory that's only used when things are run. It's not permanent storage for any of this stuff. So the HDD and SDD is the permanent storage. And again, the SDD stands for solid state drive, and they can be from 3 to 30 times faster than a hard disk drive. And you may say, well, I don't have a disk drive on a smartphone or a tablet. Yeah, most of those do not have a hard drive. They have an SDD. They have the solid state drive, and they may have 32 gigabytes or 64 or 128 gigabytes, but they do have storage there for all of the software and the operating system and photos and everything else. Okay, the last hardware component that you see in any of these devices is the capability of doing the network interface. And this is the connection, could be a connection to Wi-Fi, if the device is connecting by Wi-Fi, could be Ethernet, where you have a wire coming into your device, could be, in the case of a tablet or a cell phone, the connection to the cell towers, and that could be 4G or 5G. And when these devices connect to other things, they also connect to other things downstream. So if you're connecting, an example would be if you're connecting your laptop or your tablet or your phone by Wi-Fi, it's connecting to a router. That router connects to a modem. That modem connects to your ISP and then eventually gets out to the internet. And your machine or your device is only going to be as fast as the weakest link between all these different pieces of hardware and the connection to the internet there. Okay, this next slide is I'm talking about something called Moore's Law. And the Moore's Law was developed in the 1970s. Scientists came up and said, gee, technology is moving pretty fast, and the amount of transistors that can be put in a square inch of a microchip is doubling every year. And at that time, in 1970, you were getting about 1,000 transistors in an inch by an inch square of a microchip. Over the years, so this graphic, and you don't have to memorize the dates or the fine print that you probably can't read anyway, but in the past 50 years, the number of transistors that they can get on a microchip has gone from roughly that 1,000 transistors up to 50 billion. So just think about that. That's what gives us that tremendous power. That gives us the ability to do speech. That gives us the ability to do all these things, is this tremendous increase over the years. And what that also means is if you've got a device, and it doesn't matter what kind of device, again, a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop, desktop, if it's getting to be 3 years old or 4 years old, that's ancient for these high-tech devices and means that they're probably 16 times slower than what you could buy today, or 32 times slower than what you could buy today for the same cost and the same size and stuff like that. They can just pack a lot more into there. So any of these devices that you have, it's good to plan to replace them. And you want to be on a schedule to replace them Phones maybe more often than your laptops and that, but a phone maybe every 3 years or 4 years at the most. A laptop every 5 years. Uh, it just depends there, but because the technology improves so much, you don't want to be running old hardware that may not be updated anymore, and certainly is getting slower and slower compared to the new devices that are out there. Okay. Uh, Now that we have a little background on these devices, let's talk about things that can be done to improve the performance of a device. And probably the easiest and one that'll maybe give you the most bang for the buck is to uninstall software. A lot of the devices that we get today come pre-installed with software or what's sometimes called junkware that you never use. So the vendor may put a bunch of apps on there, or maybe it's a case of you just never do anything with them. They're so what you want to do is you want to get rid of some of that stuff. Over time, you may have installed software that you no longer use also. So whether it came installed when you got that device, or you installed it, or a friend told you to do this, or maybe you installed it because you needed to use it for a month or two, and then you never uninstalled it. You should be brutally honest and uninstall everything that you don't use. So there's no person that I've ever met that uses all the software and all the things that they have on their smartphone or on their laptop. If you're not sure what a piece of software does, either by its name or the way the icon looks, you can easily do a Google search to see what it is. And the important thing to remember, if you do delete or uninstall any of this software, you can, at a later time, if you do need it, you can always install it again when needed. One of the examples I use is I go to the Minnesota State Fair every year, and they have a very nice app that will tell you where the different food vendors are, where you can find stuff, where you currently are, show you the map, and things like that. Well, I don't leave that installed on my phone all the time. I'll install it in August and use it when I go to the fair. And then after I'm done with the fair, I uninstall it. So for most of the year, 11 plus months out of the year, it's not on my phone. If you do have the software that you're not using on your phone, it's using up space on your hard drive or your solid state drive. It's using up RAM because even though you may not be running the app, there's parts of it that will be running on your phone even when you're not running it. You also have a CPU that's being used and the battery that's being used. And all of these apps usually get updates. Well, you're going to still be doing those updates, but you aren't using it. So why have it slow down your machine? If you have an Android device, a tablet or a smartphone, it's very easy to uninstall an app or software out there. So from your home screen, all you do is see an icon, you tap and hold that app, you move it slightly, and when you drag it slightly, you'll see up at the top of the screen will be the words uninstall. So if you drop it up to the uninstall, bing, bang, boom, you uninstall it. From an Apple device, an Apple smartphone or iPad, it's a very similar procedure. From the home screen, you tap and hold the app, and instead of having to drag it up, Apple will give you a little menu, and one of the menu options it has is remove app. So it's just that easy to remove on your smartphone and that. On a PC, you can use the Windows settings / apps, and that'll let you see the various programs that are installed. and you can uninstall the apps there. I think we see that on this next slide here. Yeah, this is what, if you go through the Windows settings and then select apps, you'll get a list here of all the various apps that are installed. If you click on any of these, then you'll see a button to do the uninstall. Oh, I guess I didn't do a screenshot there. But if you click on any of these, you'll see a button right underneath it to uninstall. And that's as easy as can be to remove it. And if you don't know what some of these do, you can, again, Google it to see what it does. And very easy. And if you do make a mistake and delete something that you'd like to get back, it's very easy to get those things back and that when you do need them. Okay, what's another tip to speed up the machine or to do stuff? Well, you want to make sure that the machine is up to date on the operating system and the software that you're running. These updates and patches help your device run at its best, and most importantly, they also fix security problems. So no software, no operating system is perfect. It's full of bugs out there, and some of them will let the bad guys, which are viruses, get on your computer or stealing accounts and passwords. So you'll want these patches installed there. Most of the cases, the devices will come and do automatic updates. Some people don't like to have the automatic updates, so they turn it that it has to be done manually. But whether you use the automatic or manual, you want to keep that up to date, because if you are running, let's say, an old version of Windows or an old Android operating system that you haven't updated, or an Apple operating system that isn't updated, your machine is vulnerable and you do want to keep up to date. Here I list, if you have a PC, there are some programs that will actually go through and scan some of your existing software and tell you if there's a newer version out there. Otherwise, just go through the ones that you use, or when you attempt to use anything, and that could be any package that you have on the PC, check and see if there's a new version or an updated version available. And this is the way that you can make sure that Windows is being updated on your PC. If you go to the settings and then update and security, that'll tell you, it'll show you if things are up to date in this case. And if there are any updates, you can choose to install them. If it's an optional update, I usually don't do the optional updates. I only do the mandatory ones. And that's what you want to make sure that you keep up with to keep your machine safe. And this tends to be, these updates aren't going to cover all of the software that you have in Windows, but it covers the Microsoft software and some of the drivers. If you have printers and things like that, it'll keep some of that stuff up to date. But there can be other packages that you have. An example might be TurboTax, or if you have Skype, or not Skype, Zoom, or a Chrome browser or stuff like that. Those also need updating, and this Windows update will not update those. Okay, another way to keep your machine running as fast as possible is to make sure and scan for viruses and spyware. On the PC, I recommend using the Microsoft Defender antivirus that comes with Windows. So you don't have to purchase or install really any other antivirus to keep your machine safe. And it does a good job. It's not the best, but if you do want to pay or load some of the other software, is free software that you can get from Xfinity or CenturyLink if they're your internet service provider, or there's free antivirus like Avast, AVG, Malwarebytes, and Bitdefender. You can get additional protection, but really the basic Microsoft antivirus is more than adequate, and then means that you don't have to load other software and check other settings and that. You should check though to make sure at different times during the year, maybe once or twice a year, to check to make sure that your definitions are getting updated and the version of the antivirus is also getting updated. Definitions, whether it's from Microsoft or Norton or any of these antivirus packages, are typically updated almost every day. So because there's new viruses and new bugs that are found, and these definitions have to be updated to keep ahead of the hackers and the viruses. Another thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you only have one antivirus running on your PC and uninstall antiviruses that you're not using. So if you do choose to use the Microsoft Defender, you want to uninstall Norton or Symantec or McAfee or whatever antivirus that you may have come loaded on your machine, or you may have installed at some period of time. But if you're no longer using it, you want to uninstall it and delete it. Now, I don't recommend an antivirus for phones and tablets. They do make apps that you can load, but if you're following basic safety practices, you will be safe and protected there. Because the operating systems in phones and tablets is a much simpler operating system, they're less likely to have bugs, and so therefore less likely to require or get infected with a virus there. So basically safety practices will protect you there, and you shouldn't require any need for an antivirus. If you do install an antivirus on your phone or tablet, I'm just warning, it is really going to slow down your phone or tablet and also drain your battery. So if you want your battery to last the longest and you want it to be as fast as possible, don't put an antivirus on. Now, some people, I'll get people that'll ask me, how do I check? I think my machine's infected. How do I check or clean it up if it is infected there? And one of the things that you can do is check for malware. And malware is things that are like scanning for your passwords, popping up screens, some things like that, and people will think that they have malware on their machine. And if you do, one of the things that you can do is you can install a package, and this is true on, it's true on phones and tablets and laptops, is you can install a software, it's called Malwarebytes. You can run the scan, and the scan will tell you whether you are infected or not, and probably 99.9% of the people that I know that run it, they don't find anything, which is good. You don't want to have malware on your machine. But if you don't uninstall it immediately, it'll be running all the time, slowing down your machine, draining your battery, taking up space on the hard drive and in RAM and that. So if you do scanning is fine, but then when it doesn't find anything, uninstall it. And maybe in another year, you want to run a scan, download the most current version, scan, and check then. Okay, the next thing we'll talk about is what's running on your PC or that. And the PC, we have a few more tools than what you have on a phone or a tablet, but there are similar ways of checking things. But I'll be talking about on the PC here. On the PC, you can do a Control-Alt-Delete and go to Task Manager and go to the Performance tab. And when you do that, you'll see this screen to the right here. See, I'm on the Performance tab here. And one of the Things that I mentioned earlier with the hardware is if you have insufficient memory, your machine is going to crawl. It's going to be very, very slow, very painful to use there. And so if you have a PC and it has 4 gigabytes of memory, you can see here the main operating system in Windows takes almost 5 gigabytes. So on this machine, my desktop, I have 16 gigabytes. So when I'm starting, I have plenty of room here. I'm only using 31% of the memory. But if you have very limited RAM on the machine, you may have exceeded or be 100% there and maxing out there. This screen is also kind of nice because it tells you, in addition to how much memory you have and what the percentage that's used, it tells you the type of memory that you have and the slots, if there's any slots open on your laptop or desktop to add additional memory, and this would tell you what kind of memory. And so if I only had limited memory here and was running out of memory, I'd look to buy additional memory or buy a new PC. That's a decision you have to make, whether to buy brand new or update there. This screen also shows you on the CPU how busy it is, and if you have multiple cores or processors, it'll tell you that information also. It'll also report on your disk, and that can be your hard disk drive or your solid state disk drive. It'll tell you how that's performing there. There's also a process tab, and that shows you what's running along with how much CPU memory and disk space each of the processes is using. And then also on the screen is a button to end the task. If something does get locked up on your Windows machine and doesn't respond, one of the ways to close it or that without having to start the machine, turn the machine off and back on, is to end the task. Just a little piece of information. People will think, well, I'm only running one program, or let's say you have a browser open. That's the only thing that you're running on the computer. Well, that's kind of false because at any one time, you're going to have all of these processes and all these things running in the background that you're not necessarily going to see an icon for that. And so the typical PC can have 60 to 200 processes running at any particular time. If your PC is running slow, look to see what software is using your CPU, the majority of your memory, and the disk by clicking on the column to sort it high to low. So this is an example here. We're in the Processes tab of Task Manager, and you can see these columns. Well, I can click on it to sort to see what process is using the highest percentage there. And so if I think that my browser is slowing things down, or there's a backup happening, or the antivirus is scanning the machine, I'll be able to tell from here. And if these names don't make sense to you, you can actually right mouse click on it and go out to the internet and get a description, or you can go just to Google and Google what this process is, and it'll tell you a description of what it actually does there. So when your machine starts, there's many programs, utilities, and devices will install processes that run every time you turn the power on to the machine. Now, you don't need all of those installed or started when you start the machine. The more things that you have in there, it just means that it takes longer and longer for your PC to start up. When you get a brand new PC, most people are surprised at how fast it boots up, but then the more software that they start loading, the slower and slower it gets. Well, you have control of that. You can turn off a lot of these things that are in the startup. The longer or the more items in your startup, it's going to take longer to start up. It's also going to use more memory. If this is a laptop or that, the battery is going to be out there, and you can have other problems. In Task Manager, it's easier to see what gets started by going to the Startup tab. Some of the names are cryptic. Again, you can go out to Google and you can see exactly what's going. Once you're at that Startup tab, you can disable a program from the startup, which means that it won't get started next time you start your machine. Now, the important thing here is if you do disable an item, it doesn't delete it off of your hard drive. It just means that it will not be automatically started each time your hard drive starts up. But you can also enable it and turn it back on if at a future point you do want it activated, or you find that an example there is, let's say I have a software that does backups, and that's in the startup. Well, if I disable it, that means that it's not started when I start my PC, which means that unless I manually start it at some point on my PC, the backup will never run. So typically a software like a backup, you do want to leave started automatically every time you start the computer. Another tab to check is called Services, and that lists, similar to the processes, you have all these hundreds and can be even thousands of things, services that are running or paused when you start up your machine. And here's an example of what it can look like there in the startup, and there's that disable, so you can highlight any item. And you can see in this particular case on my machine here, the only item that is enabled in the startup for me is my backup software. All the other entries in here I've disabled. Doesn't mean that these packages won't work for me. In fact, Skype works fine, and all these other packages work fine. They're just, parts of them are not started automatically when I turn on the machine and being run every time I turn on the machine. So that's the nice thing there. And this is a list of some of the services. And again, there can be hundreds of these services out there, and they may be stopped, they may be running, they may be active, they can be in all different states. So let's take a quick look at Task Manager. So if I do a Control-Alt-Delete, comes up with Task Manager here. I've got my Task Manager. These are the various tabs up on top here. You can see right now we're in the Processes tab. There's our CPU. So we're not maxing out our CPU. It's only at 16%. Memory, we're at 35. Disk, we're at 2. Network, so connecting to the internet or sending and receiving data, well, we're not really using much at all. And the GPU is at 6%. Now I can go back over to our performance where we talked about it showing the memory, how much memory we have. On this laptop, I have 8 gigabytes of RAM, so it's showing as 7.9. I'm using 2.8, which is good. Here's I have one actually on this laptop. There's one slot free. This is the type of memory. So if I wanted to upgrade it and get more memory, this is how I could tell there. Now this is where I can also graphically see, here's how my CPU, well, you want to keep it below the 100%, because if it's being maxed out there, that's when your machine starts slowing down. Disk drive, similar type of thing. You don't want it maxed out there, and certainly on this it's not maxed out. Let's go over here to the startup. There's our startup. There on this machine, I don't have my backup, so actually all the items that these different software on here put in the startup, I've disabled them all because I don't need them started every time the machine starts up. Some of these are for HP, the HP printer, Skype, so different things out here. Okay, let's go back. I think this is where we left off. Okay, let's go back. So this is a way to check and see what's running on there and what's going on. And there's always lots of things because there's lots of things running in the background that are going on. So one of the other things you can do on any of these devices usually is to free up disk space. Again, we'll start with a PC, but a lot of these things you can do on a phone. We'll talk about you've got lots of photos or videos out there or music out there. It's a matter of cleaning up the phone of some of these files to free up space there. And this is the Microsoft Disk Cleanup services out here, and if you bring this up from the Windows Start menu, it'll let you select what you these are valid things to clean up, and you can clean it up and speed up your computer there. Also, if you use a browser, this cleans up the Microsoft browser, the Microsoft Edge browser, but if you do use other browsers like Safari or Chrome or Firefox, they also have their own temporary internet files, and you want to go out to their settings to get rid of these temporary files and this stuff that may be taking up lots of space on your device there. And for phones and tablets, you can usually go into your settings, storage manage, and then storage and then manage storage, and they'll have options in there for cleaning up these temporary files, or sometimes they're called cached files, or different things out there. And then here I mentioned on a lot of phones and tablets, people end up with thousands and thousands of photos or videos, and you do want to keep your good photos and videos, but delete the rest. Be brutal, go through, you've got 5 pictures of the same thing or that, take the best one, get rid of it. The videos, figure out what you want to keep. If you're backing them up to the cloud somewhere, frequently they can then be deleted off of your phone to free up space and make things run faster. This is an option on PCs and that to do what's called defragging your hard drive. When a file is written on a hard drive, it's written in multiple small chunks, and these files go to the first available space on the drive. Well, what that means is if you have a 10 megabyte file, a big photo there, it's taking up 2,500 slots on your hard drive, and they can be all over the hard drive. And as you delete files and move and update, the disk drive gets more and more what's called fragmented with these little pieces all over the place. And so there's a utility in there to unfragment it or put all the pieces back together, and that'll go through and make your reading from the hard drive or writing to the hard drive much faster there. Now, if you have SSDs, that's that solid state drive, and solid state drives are what you have on a phone and that. If you have SSDs, defragging you don't have to do, but if you have an older computer that uses a physical hard drive in there, usually the defragging will increase the speed of the computer quite a bit there. Okay, some more tips. Close open apps that you're not using. So if you continue to leave them open, they're using CPU, they're using RAM, they're using battery.
The other thing is to restart your device and clean out the memory. You want to do that at least once a week. And so I know some people that'll leave their phone on all the time and they're never turning it off completely. And what you want to do is you want to shut it down, turn it off completely, and let it come back up, and do that at least once a week there. And that's also true of a laptop or a desktop or anything like that. Over time, they leave extra things open and extra things are running, and you want to clear it all out there. Remove excess widgets on your phone or tablet home screen. So some people have things like a clock on there, or little weather app that's showing the current weather condition, or news, or photos, cycling through photos, or a calendar, or things like that. Well, all of those things will slow down your device. And so if you're looking to get it as fast as possible, turn those things off or uninstall them. It doesn't mean that you can't, if you want weather, open up a weather app and go out and see what the weather is. It just isn't always going out to the internet. It isn't always running in the background there. Some apps come in 2 different versions now. So they make the full version, and they also make what's called a light or a go version. And those versions take up less memory, less CPU, run faster. In some cases, you'll see them shown or recommended for older devices. But it's also can be used on the newer devices to make your machine or your device run faster there. Another option is, instead of loading an app at all, is to use the website in a browser to see if that provides the functions that you want. So for some people, okay, if I want to go out to Facebook, yes, there's a Facebook app that I can load, but I can also use a browser on here, and I can go out to Facebook on the browser, and I'm not having to load the Facebook app then. Now, I mention in here, see if it provides the functions that you use and is easy enough to use. For some people, they prefer the app. For others, they prefer the browser. And if you can get by with the browser, that's one less app that's loaded on your phone, taking storage, CPU, things like that. All of these devices come with voice commands, so like Siri or Google Voice or Cortana. If you turn off that function, then your machine doesn't have to listen and respond and analyze everything that's being said. So that can speed up the computer there. Indexing, this is an example in Windows here of indexing your hard drive to make it easier to search your hard drive. Well, nowadays, most people don't use the mechanism to search their hard drive, so this indexing, which can slow down your machine, actually is providing very little benefit to 99% of the people, and you can turn it off. So you can disable that by going out individually to a hard drive and doing it. It doesn't delete any files, doesn't reduce any functionality of any software that you may have. It just, if you do want to do a search within File Manager, which again, 99% of the people that I know don't do a search within File Manager, it's something that's not needed there. Now, there are other scans that are taking place. So if you load apps on your phone or on your PC or that, many of the apps like iTunes or photo packages, or if you back up to the cloud, or if you have music players and podcast players and antivirus and updates and notifications, all this stuff requires stuff to be running in the background. And if you need that functionality, fine, leave it turned on. But if you don't need that functionality, you can usually go into the apps or into the software and turn it off so it's not scanning all the time. I mentioned here in some cases, like in a desktop or a laptop, and it can be advantageous to leave it turned on all the time, or at least overnight, to catch up on all of this scanning and doing things there. If you leave it off, so like this laptop, if I leave this laptop off and don't use it until the next time I have a presentation, when I turn it on to do that presentation, it may take anywhere from 5 minutes to 60 minutes to go through and run all these tasks and scans. So what I usually do when I have this is I'll turn on my laptop or my tablet or my phone before I'm actually going to use it, to let it go through and do all of its updates and all of its scans there. Okay, within browsers nowadays, you do have a thing called extensions or add-ons, and this is kind of like we talked about the startup there, where things are started and available and that. Well, over time, you may have installed things that you're no longer using, and you can go in and disable if you're not using certain functions for weather or stock market ticker or things like that. You can turn those things on or off. And you get to it, this is an example of the Chrome. If you go to the Chrome, the 3 dots up here, go to More Tools, and then you'll see there's a deal for extensions. And then this shows you the list of any extensions you may have installed there. This is if everything else fails and you just want to kind of clear the device, whether it's a phone or a laptop or that, things get so bad or so slow and you just kind of want to start over, all of these devices have a reset. And that reset will reset it to the factory install, not have any of your apps on there, and things like that. So that gives you the clean slate. The device will usually run as faster than it's ever run before, but then you'll have to go back through and individually start loading the apps that you had and things like that. But if things get so bad, some people, like with their laptops or things like that, will say, okay, I don't want to go through individually and try and speed things up. I just want to reset it there. And I mentioned here, only attempt it when things are so bad and you have lots of time, because this isn't going to happen in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour. The machine will be back up and running probably in less than an hour, but for you to reload some of your software, reload your data and things like that, that may take you weeks or months to reload the stuff. If you are going to do that, what you can do is, I mentioned here, just do a search on the internet, and it'll tell you, if you have an Android device, it'll tell you where to go in the settings to reset your machine. If you have an Apple, it'll tell you where to go to reset and things like that. But before you do any of this, and they'll step you through this also, they'll tell you to make sure and back up all your data, and if there are settings or that you have, back up and make sure that everything is set there. Okay, I know I covered a lot of things, but you can go back and look at the handout or look at some of these things, and hopefully they'll start making more sense as you start looking in some of the settings and that for your different devices there. Are there questions or comments? It can seem intimidating, but it's one of those things that I mentioned earlier, that some people will come to me and they'll say, I think I have a virus, or I think I have this, and I'll just go, well, let's take a look at your machine. Well, it's running all these updates right now, or this is going on, or that's going on. So most people don't have a virus or that. Their machine and all the software and the operating system has to keep itself updated and going there. So that's usually what happens with the different machines. Yes. That's a good question. The question was, how long can I keep one of these machines, whether it's a desktop or a laptop? There's a couple of different factors. As an example, right now, if it's a is it a Windows machine that you're talking about? And this is similar for an Apple machine too, but Windows especially now, we recently went to Windows 11. Windows 11 is out. It came out close to 2 years ago there. That set the clock ticking for when Windows 10 will no longer be supported. Windows 10 will no longer be supported in 2025. So any machine that you want to have it running Windows 11 or more. Well, most of the machines, if you haven't bought a new machine in the last 3 years, 2 to 3 years, cannot run Windows 11, can't be updated to Windows 11. Prior versions of Windows, most of those you could update. They may run slow, but you could have updated it. With this new version, Windows 11, there's security built into that, and that requires certain chips on the computer. And that means that only computers built, like I said, probably in the last 2 to 3 years, will be able to run Windows 11. So in general, the easy answer that I kind of give to people for laptops, desktops, phones, a computer year is somewhat like a dog year. It isn't a year, it's like 7 human years. So these devices get old as soon as you walk out of the store or buy it online. When should you replace it? Laptops, desktops, phones in general, I'll say 3 to 4 years, buy a new phone. Don't buy the high-end phone, buy the mid-range phone. Because 3, 4 years, you can buy another one and it's less than what you would have paid for the high-end. The high-end still is going to be outdated in 3 or 4 years because that chart that I talked about, the number of transistors in an inch there, that keeps going, getting better and better. So the devices keep getting better and better. So buy only what you need today. Use it for 3 years, 4 years. A laptop, you may get 5 years out of it, but then buy a new one. This laptop that I have, I bought this 5 years ago and I paid $299 for it. Now I could have bought a $2,000 laptop, but I didn't need a $2,000 laptop. For what I was doing, $299 is fine. When it comes to its end of life, I'll buy another laptop for maybe $349. I'm not going to spend $2,000 because I don't need it. You know, that kind of a thing. So you have to look at everybody's needs are a little bit different, but in general, I recommend buying either mid to low and then just be prepared in 3 years, 4 years to buy something new, and you're going to be happier because, again, the devices get better and faster, and you have all kinds of advantages there. Yes, the desktop's the same principle there, and that the desktops in general, what was it, about 6 years ago or 7 years ago, laptops now outsell desktops. So the majority of people now, I think the number is maybe up to about 60-40. 60% of the new machines are laptops, 40% are desktops. So there's getting to be less and less desktops, and I do a survey every year, the 3M Computing Club, and I ask them to estimate where they spend their time. How much time do you spend on your phone? How much time do you spend on a tablet? How much time do you spend on laptops, desktops? And you can just see the amount of time that people spend on a laptop or desktop going down And we have people in the club that don't even have a laptop anymore, don't have a desktop anymore. They're doing everything that they need on their phone or a tablet. Yes, and you can do it on a phone or a tablet, because I could use this if I wanted to. Now the screen's kind of small, but if I want to do what's called content creation, working with spreadsheets, working with Word documents, I can do that on here. The screen is small, but it's no fun pecking. But you can get a Bluetooth keyboard, and you can put a keyboard. So I have a tablet, and a tablet is, if you have a 10-inch tablet, that's a good size. And again, depending on how much time you spend and what your needs are, you can get by with that over buying a laptop or a desktop. Now, there's other people that are working with documents all the time, spreadsheets, and they want to have 2 monitors up and they want to have stuff here. So everybody's a little bit different, but the majority of people fall into this category that they're going out, they're looking at their email, they're going out to Facebook, they're doing stuff with photos, they may be doing some genealogy stuff. There's basic categories that people do, and once you figure out what you do, then you can figure out what device is probably the best for you and how much you should spend or what you should get. But over the years, I do more and more things on my phone. It's always with me. I mean, this has so much power on that. Now, I also have a tablet. So when I'm watching TV or stuff like that, I like using the tablet. And I use the tablet more for writing emails to people. I don't write long emails in here. I'll respond, but I don't write long emails in here. So there's different things that you can do. You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thanks for coming today. And the next one is in January.